And I'm very flattered that you agreed to be here today. It's been quite the ride for Arkeocean, and it's been fantastic to look at it because I remember a few years ago someone was telling me, "Oh, you must go and talk to this little startup. You know, they have an amazing product. I'm sure they're going to be great." And then here we are, a few years later. You know, you are one of the main players in this field. So perhaps to start off this conversation, can you tell us a bit more about what Arkeocean is and why? Why did you start this company?
Oh, thank you. It's true. It's been quite a ride, and it started a bunch of years back when I finished my studies. I got out of school. I was lucky enough to have a fellowship to work in technology, but applied to archaeology because a little bit of background. I have a dual degree. I'm an electrical and computer engineer, but I also have a degree in archaeology. And I had this opportunity with the EU to work as a fellow in Belgium to in a company that did augmented reality for cultural heritage sites. So
Oh,
I got to
cool.
use both my degrees for a year, and after that, it was which field do I want to go to, because I was quite passionate about both.
Mm.
And that's where my wonderful family came in, and my father and my mom were like, listen, you're young, like, take a chance. Why not make your own company, And that's how Arkeocean started. Arkeocean as archaeology and ocean. And one of our
Oh.
first found, yeah, one of our first founding project was actually making a drone for underwater archaeological sites. But I soon realized that I didn't know much about underwater archaeology. It was a whole different ball game than terrestrial archaeology.
Yeah.
And so I did a master's in Mediterranean archaeology to learn a bit more about shipwrecks and how one would dig and conserve like these sites, and how our technology could be pertinent to help out with that. And little by little, we realized that our technology was quite strategic for swarms. It was one of the key technologies that would allow us to make underwater swarms of small drones. And it's kind of grown since there. And now we work in the environmental sector, the energy sector, and of course, defense. So it's been quite a ride, yes.
Yeah, and it's absolutely amazing. And you were very young when you founded this company, so we'll definitely come back to this. But let's start with your studies. You know where you come from. So you studied in the U.S., right, at
I
Rutgers
did.
University.
Yes. So I'm quite lucky that my dad. So my dad is also an engineer, and he's worked in the defense industry for a long time. He was working for Thales,
All
and so
right.
when I was 5, we moved to Australia. So we spent 3 years there. So I learned English there. Then we moved back to France because I'm French and my family is French. And then we moved to the U.S. when I was 13, and then I stayed there. I did my whole high school curriculum there. I went to university at Rutgers University, where I was lucky enough to be able to do this dual degree because it's a wonderful school that at the time was it was one of only 2 schools that offered a electrical and computer engineering degree, but also had a curriculum where it was built in, like you had the option from the first year to go on a 5-year program with a dual degree where you could sign up with another school. And within Rutgers, because it's such a big school, there was an anthropology department that had like a strong focus on archaeology as well. And so I chose that school because it allowed me to do both degrees, which were really what I was passionate about. And so that was a great opportunity, and the school was quite wonderful. I had a really great time. And this is something that really built me up to become, I guess, a leader, or
Mm.
not afraid to be a leader, because when I was there, I was part of SWE, which is the Society of Women Engineers. I was president of that. That was very character building, being with other women, because at our school, so the College of Engineering was at my time around 2,000 students, and the most popular degree was computer electrical and electrical engineering. which was about 200 students, and there were only 7% of women at the time in my course, and that was the biggest course. Of course, there was more women in other types of engineering, but the two main ones, which had the most students, was electrical and computer and mechanical. And mechanical was even worse. It was 5% of
Oh my
women in
God.
mechanical engineering. So having that community of women and having a lot of support from the department too was quite wonderful, and really helped me get my strides, I guess, on knowing that things were possible, and there was how to organize the the society was very active with promoting engineering, but also showing us other female engineers that were leaders. So we had a lot of like contacts and showing what was possible, and that there was actually no limit. Women could do exactly the same, even though we're a minority and we might have certain roadblocks put in front of us. That a lot of women can succeed and have everything to succeed, and that makes there's a very strong sorority in place, and I quite liked that. Not that I felt that there was any kind of major pushback from men, even though I didn't feel like we were quite as included as we should be. It wasn't like specific pushback, but more of a lack of inclusion. But having that sorority was quite an eye opener for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
same thing with the Society of Women. We had a sorority called Phi Sigma Rho, and I was part of that and president of that as well. So it was quite nice.
Yeah, I imagine. So, we're not going to try to aid you here. That's not the idea. But just to give a sense,
Yeah, sure.
when was this? Like, when were you
So
doing
I
like what part?
graduated in 2007 from
Okay.
Rutgers. So
Okay.
it's starting to date. Like it's starting to date. But yeah, it was in 2007, and I left for Belgium for a year and founded Arkeocean in 2009. So that was quite a ways back too. So Arkeocean has been around for a little bit, but it started with just me and my dad and my mom, in our garage for quite some time, trying to and me doing also my master's to try and figure out how to best apply the technology that we were developing. We also had a bunch of different projects that had nothing to do with drones, but with divers. So
Okay.
it evolved slowly. And in the past, since actually, I think, so the past 10 years is where we realized that the technology was quite was a key technology, an enabling technology for swarms of AUVs. And
Mhm.
we were part of the first swarms of projects for swarms of drones. But it's quite interesting because how the company evolved. It's kind of like we say the company evolves, but it's actually the people in the company that evolve,
Mhm.
and the company is just a reflection of you. And we saw, so this was completely emerging. This was completely new, swarms of, and it still is like we're still quite unique in that domain of making swarms of underwater drones. But at the time, we were finding our way, and our technology found its way in one of the only projects in the world where there was a first swarm of 20 drones
Mm.
being used. And slowly but surely, we became the technology. There was no other way of actually making swarms of drones without this technology. And so we were included little by little in bigger and bigger projects. And now we're involved in projects where there's thousands of drones,
Mhm.
thousands, and no one is talking about thousands of drones except for us,
Yeah.
in terms. So it's been quite a ride, and we've evolved a lot. We went from like 2 years ago, there were 5 people in the company, and now we're near to 30, and we're going to double that by the end of this year. So it's and the sky's the limit afterwards, but it's quite a strong, like, all of a sudden push, and
Steep curve.
it's a very steep curve, and that brings a lot of learning for us too.
Yeah.
It's very comfortable when there's only 5 people in the company.
Yeah, I imagine. And so again, I think we should tell this to the listeners who may not know very well the ocean world and the underwater world more specifically. As you said, physics plays a significant part, and also that's why I also find it like the most fascinating area in the naval writing that I do, because well, you can't circumvent physics. So that's where it's that's where human mind is amazing in finding solutions to problems. I mean, you can't communicate very well, you can't see very well. So, what do you do? How do you go around this? How does a submarine navigate? How does it know where it is? How does it communicate? And similarly with your systems, how do you do a swarm underwater when it's complicated to communicate and to know where you are? So I totally understand the fascination that you would have had for this. And it's great, that your parents were supportive and were actually saying like, okay, you're in your mid 20s, go ahead and like start your own company and we'll be there for you. So you were saying it started off, the good old myth of the garage. It started off in the
It really
garage.
was in the garage. It really was. It really was the garage, and it was the garage for a long time. We put it there was actually the garage, and there was a little nook, and so we made it into an office. But it was for a long time the garage, and I had like a little sliver of light, like
Oh
it felt like
dear,
I was in a cave all the time. Yeah, but it was.
you were already
But
underwater.
yeah, it was like I was being underwater. And you're right, underwater we have very few conventional technologies that work. So we don't have GPS, we don't have Wi-Fi, we don't have radio. None of that works, especially in salty water.
Mhm.
Some of the technology can work a little bit, has a longer range in lakes and rivers, but in the ocean, it's a no-go. Like Wi-Fi works around 4 centimeters, like this.
Yeah, that's
Like it's
nothing.
that's the range you get for Wi-Fi, so that's not great. So you have to rely on acoustics, which is what whales and dolphins use, which is like seems to make sense. But you have no absolute reference, so you don't have what we call GPS, where you can say I'm here, and especially when you're in a body of water, you have no reference for speed either. You don't
Mm.
know how fast you're going when you're in the middle of the water. So it's quite complicated because you have no absolute reference. You're in a body of water that's moving, so you're moving with it, and you don't quite know how fast you're going. So it creates a lot of complexity for positioning.
Mhm.
But not only that, the ocean, first of all, 71% of the planet is
Mhm.
covered by water. So that's the majority of our planet. It goes down to depths of up to 11 kilometers, but on an average, it's around 4 kilometers,
Yeah.
4,000 meters. The pressure is huge, 400 bars for 4,000 meters. So that's a big problem, mechanically speaking.
Mhm.
Pressure is a big problem. And seawater wants to attack all your electronics. Like
Mhm.
salt is not your friend. But there's another big factor that's a problem is life.
Yeah.
Life is blooming in the oceans and is of course problematic just for your system because one, if you stay too long underwater, things are going to start growing on your system. You don't. You also there are hurdle. You don't. Plant life. You don't want to damage neither the plant life nor your system. So there's a lot of things you have to take in consideration. Which, for example, it's not as problematic in outer space.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to have that kind of issue when you're going in space. So that's why the oceans are, the final frontier. And that's another thing. Like I love that we're explorers. We're literally exploring and discovering this ecosystem, which is our planet, our home. And it's quite a fun ride. It's quite an interesting and very fulfilling. And we
Mm.
have so much to discover, so much to discover. So coming back to the fact that we're problem solvers, that's the ultimate problem solving. We have literally no tools. It's kind of like MacGyver. I've got gum, a stick of gum, and matches. I have to build a system that goes to 4,000 meters. I'm kind of like exaggerating here, but
I'm
it's
hoping, yes.
but and there's no compromise on quality. You can't
Mhm.
compromise on quality. So that was that was the whole challenge of going around making swarms because
Yeah.
we want to make lots of drones. There's a huge constraint financially.
Mm.
One drone costs a lot of money. So if you want to make swarms of hundreds and thousands, that's your first consideration. How can I make them for a fraction of the cost, but with no compromise on quality? Because I can't, like when I'm
Yeah.
sending a drone to 3,000 meters, it can't be made of a stick of gum and matches. It has to be something that holds up. And
Yeah.
but and also it's kind of like a blind thing. You throw them in the ocean and it's like, good luck. Hope you
Yeah.
come back. You know, like
Exactly.
I can't, like we can't be there. We can't touch it. Just like when you send something into space. Once it's launched, it's
Yeah.
see ya.
It's
Have a
there.
nice trip. And so it's the same. It's very it's yeah, you're kind of scared, but you also have to trust that your work has been done correctly and your team is there, to also make sure everything's going well. And no, it's quite a wonderful challenge.
Mhm.
And again, we're going places where this is like complete discovery
Yeah.
where no man has gone before, like it's
Yeah.
or woman,
Yeah, exactly. Or no
it's
human has gone
or
before. Yeah,
human has
exactly.
gone before. When I first submitted a project, I remember it was reviewed by specialists, like from different companies, and I had one call me, and he was like, "First, I want to tell you, like, I think it's wonderful. I think your project is very ambitious, and it's wonderful." And he's like, "But I'm sorry, I think you're not going to make it. Like, it's because it's
Wow.
too ambitious, and you guys are too small. Like, you're not gonna. It's not possible." And that's when I told him, I was like, maybe, but because we're small, we don't think we can't. So that's going to help us. Like we don't see it that way. We can't even imagine not making it. Like this is,
Yeah.
that's our goal, that's our passion, and we can't fathom not making it. And so if you never knew you couldn't, you did. So
Yeah.
it's and we proved them wrong on that. And this year we went again to the same trade show, and within 2 years, um, it's been like, oh great, this looks like something out of Star Wars, like this is science fiction. To wow, okay, when can we start working together? And that's been
Yeah.
awesome. That's
Yeah,
been
I
great.
imagine.